Hilchos Eiruvin Perek Shlishi, the laws of the Eiruv, chapter 3. We're talking about the Eiruv Shacharis. You have a bunch of homes that open up into a shared courtyard. The people are not allowed to carry in the courtyard unless they make an Eiruv. They join together, they chip in for some food, and thereby declare joint ownership of the entire property. Both the public space and the private space, it becomes one big unit, and that's how they're able to carry in the entire domain as if it was one big private domain. Today's chapter, quite an involved chapter, is occupied with one concept: defining what's considered to be a joint space in regards to the laws of Eiruv. Sometimes a bunch of homes will open into a space, but because there's some kind of partition in the space, the joint space will actually be considered into two spaces, and each individual space will have to make their own Eiruv. Sometimes you have the opposite. You think it's two separate spaces, but according to halacha, it's considered to be one space, and everybody's got to join in the Eiruv across the entire thing for it to be considered a valid Eiruv. And sometimes you have something in the middle ground, where a space is somewhat open but somewhat closed, and therefore halacha gives you the license to do whatever you want. You can consider it to be one big space, everybody can join in one Eiruv. You can consider it to be two separate spaces, and people can do two separate Eiruvs. That's basically what we're talking about today. Defining these different spaces. What's considered to be one space, what's considered to be two spaces, and what's considered to be neither here nor there, where you can make either one either way you want. So bear with me, it's a bit involved, as I said. We'll go through case by case. We have many diagrams today. Actually, this one is thanks to a very special Rambam, which is called Rambam HaMevuar. He explained Rambam, where they have many clarifying diagrams that I borrowed from there and I'm going to be using today to show on the screen. Halacha Aleph, Chaloin shebein shtei chatzeros. If you have a window, an opening between two courtyards. The question is now, does the opening qualify to consider both courtyards to be one space, or is it still considered two separate courtyards? It says the Rambam, Im yesh bei arba'a tfachim al arba'a tfachim hayasar al zeh. If the opening was 4 by 4 tfachim in length and width, v'haya karev min ha'aretz b'seich asara tfachim, and it was within 10 tfachim of the ground, any part of the opening was within 10 tfachim of the ground, not the whole thing necessarily. Afilu kule l'mayla me'asara u'miktsase b'seich asara. Even if the entire window was above 10 tfachim, just part of it, a sliver, came down into the space within 10 tfachim from the ground, or most of it was within 10 tfachim, just part of it protruded above 10 tfachim. The bottom line is some part of the opening was within the first 10 tfachim from the ground. That converts it into a seesaw space. You can do whatever you want with it. The opening is somewhat big enough, but not fully big enough. If the dwellers of both courtyards wanted to make one big Eiruv, harishus biyadam, they have the permission. And through this Eiruv, they will become like one courtyard. They can carry from one to the other. But if they want, they can say, you know what, ignore the opening. We're two separate courtyards. We're going to make two separate Eiruvs. These on their own and those on their own. But if the opening of the window was less than 4 by 4 tfachim, or it was entirely above 10 tfachim, and here there's no option. This opening doesn't do anything. Both courtyards are still considered to be separate, and they have to make two separate Eiruvs, these for themselves and those for themselves. The commentary is explained because if you remember, the idea of a partition enclosing an area to make it a private domain is only if the partition is 10 tfachim high. If the partition is less than 10 tfachim high, then the mechitza, the partition, is compromised, and it's no longer considered to be a private domain. So when the window is above 10 tfachim from the ground, so if you're looking at the wall, on the first 10 tfachim, all you see is wall. Nothing's been compromised. So it stays two separate courtyards. Once the window enters into the 10 tfachim space, so it's somewhat compromised and somewhat not. It's not fully compromised because it doesn't go across the entire thing, but it's partially compromised. So therefore, you get to choose. You want to look at it as one big courtyard, make 1, 2, make it 2. You get the choice. Halacha Bey says the Rambam, that's only in a window between two courtyards. When do we say this law, that the opening has to be within 10 tfachim from the ground to give you the license to mix the two? Is only if you're in a window between two courtyards. But if we're talking about a window between two homes, in other words, actually just bring up a picture from yesterday, not the exact case, but let's say you have a home there. You see the home, and there's a window going between two homes. So now, says the Rambam, even if the window was at a height higher than 10 tefachim from the ground, and the same principle would apply to a skylight, a window between a bottom floor and a top floor. The very fact that there is an opening, no matter what height it is, makes license for the mixture of the homes. If they want, they can make one Eiruv. They can mix both homes. Even if there isn't a practical way to get up there. There's no ladder between the two homes or between the bottom floor and the top floor. The opening itself gives you the license. The same condition though still applies. The window has to be a 4x4 space. That it has to be. The height where it is doesn't matter. But the opening has to be at least 4x4 tefachim. If it was a round window, a round opening, and this applies both to the courtyards and to the homes. If the circle is big enough to make a square, to draw a square inside it, a 4x4 tefachim, we treat it as a square opening, and in the case of the courtyards, so long as it's within 10 tefachim, you can make one Eiruv, and in the case of a home, even if it's higher than that, it's already big enough to make both homes be able to mix. Halacha Gimel says the Rambam. If you have a wall that divides between two courtyards or a pile of straw, like in place of a wall, they put a massive pile of straw going across the length of the courtyard, it divides the courtyards in half. However, this wall or this straw pile was less than 10 tefachim tall. Okay, I don't have a picture of it over here, but it's fairly simple to imagine. Because the partition is less than 10 tefachim tall, they have no way other than to make one Eiruv. You have to connect. Everyone's got to join. Because the wall is too small. But once the wall or the pile of straw is 10 tefachim tall or more, they have to make two separate Eiruvs. These on their own and those on their own, because there is no connector. But what if you have a ladder on each side? You can see that here in the picture. It's a ladder on each side of the courtyard. The wall is 10 tefachim or more. It's a tall wall. But there's a ladder that goes, and the ladders are aligned. We'll soon see about not aligned ladders. The ladders are aligned. You go up one ladder and right down the other. Harehin kepesach, says the Rambam. We treat these ladders as an entrance between the two courtyards. The imratzu marvin echad. And now, if they want, they can make one Eiruv. It isn't a force. It doesn't make it like a fully open courtyard where you have to go with one Eiruv. You could now. Because you have easy access, you can make one Eiruv, treat it all as one courtyard. Even if the ladder wasn't so easily accessible, it was very steep, it was stuck to the wall. Where you cannot ascend the ladder until you pull it back and allow the underside of the ladder to distance itself from the wall. It's still the very presence of the ladder gives you the license to make one Eiruv. Even if the top of the ladder didn't reach the top of the wall, it wasn't as tall as the wall is in the diagram, it was a little shorter. So long as from the top of the ladder to the top of the wall, there's less than 3 tefachim of space, we've seen this rule already many times, it gives you license because less than 3 tefachim of space are considered to be filled, attached, connected, and the ladder's presence gives you license to make one Eiruv. If they so desire, they can now make one Eiruv. Halacha Dalet says the Rambam, an interesting twist. Let's say the wall between the two courtyards was quite thick. It was 4 tefachim thick, as you can see in the diagram. What that means is that you can actually make use of the top of the wall. So long as the Talmud says that the width of an average person is 4 tefachim. So long as the wall is less than 4 tefachim wide, a person cannot make use of the top of the wall. And therefore the ladders have to be aligned, as I said before, in order to consider them an entrance. But if the wall is thick, with a thickness of 4 tefachim, the asu sulam mikan, and they put a ladder on each side, now, afal pisha sulam is miruchakim zamizeh. Even if the ladders are distant from one another, as you can see in the diagram, one ladder goes up towards the bottom of the courtyard, another ladder goes up towards the top. Imratzu marvin echad. It's still enough that if you want, you can now make one Eiruv. Because you could climb the ladder, make use of the wall, walk across the wall, it's wide enough, and then go down the other ladder. But if the wall was not 4 tefachim thick, then you have to have the ladders aligned, or at least within 3 tefachim of space. So long as the ladders are close enough, that there isn't 3 tefachim of space between them, they can make one Eiruv and get away with it. But once the two ladders are so disaligned, that there's more than 3 tefachim of space in between them, I wonder if I can show that to you over here, yes, less than 3 tefachim of space is okay. But more than that, the 2 ladders, although they're there, But since you can't make use of the top of the wall, they're too far from each other, so they're not considered an entrance, and both courtyards have to make separate Eiruvs. Halacha Hey. Now we're getting into a very interesting concept, and that is the idea of the reduction of the wall. See, the wall between the two courtyards, because it's 10 tfachim tall, it separates the two courtyards and makes you have to do 2 Eiruvs. The question is there a mechanism that you can do that will make you legally treat the wall as less than 10 tfachim? And that's the case at hand here. Bana matseva al gabi matseva b'tzad ha'koisel. You built a protrusion, and on top of that another protrusion coming out of the side of one of the walls. Now, sometimes, in some cases, this protrusion will be big enough for a person to step on it, and from there to go on top of the wall. If it's big enough for a person to step on it and make easy use of it, that's where we begin to measure the height of the wall. It's considered to reduce the wall down to that height, as the Rambam says. Im yesh batachtoina arba, if the lower protrusion has a surface area of 4 by 4 tfachim, mimma'et. It reduces the height of the wall, and you begin to measure the height of the wall from the point of the bottom protrusion. And now, if from there to the top of the wall is less than 10 tfachim, they have to make 1 Eiruv together. They cannot make 2. Ein batachtoina arba. What if the bottom protrusion doesn't have a surface area of 4 by 4 tfachim? So it's a little smaller, a person can't make easy use of it. And in addition to that, it's so close to the top protrusion, there's less than 3 tfachim of space between them. They're considered to be one thing. It still reduces the height of the wall, because the top and the bottom protrusion combined become a healthy unit of space, and we begin to measure the height of the wall after that. And therefore, if they so desire, they can make 1 Eiruv. They don't have to. I think I misspoke before. They don't have to make 1 Eiruv. It serves to reduce the wall to the point that if you want, you can make 1 Eiruv. The same would apply to wooden steps that you put next to the wall. Same thing. If they're big enough, surface area 4 by 4 tfachim, the height of the wall is reduced, and you begin to measure from there. Halacha Vav. Koisel. Okay, here's the case of the. You have the 4 tfachim. You don't have the 4 tfachim. Okay, here we go. Koisel gavaya shebein shtei chatzeres. A high wall between 2 courtyards. V'ziz yotzei be'emtza isay, and you have a ledge coming out in the middle. The ledge now is not so easily accessible as the other case of the protrusion on the bottom. It's kind of like in the middle of the wall. But the Rambam says, Im nishar min haziz, adreish hakoisel paches me'asara. If you can measure from the top of the ledge to the top of the wall is less than 10 tfachim, maniach sulam lifnei aziz, put a ladder up against the ledge. It only has to reach the height of the ledge, and now that's already enough. They can now make 1 Eiruv if they want. Why? Because the ladder allows you to easily ascend the ledge, and from the ledge you can easily ascend the wall. It's less than 10 tfachim from the ledge to the top of the wall. Less than 10 tfachim is considered a compromised mechitza, compromised partition, and it unites the courtyard. The commentary said it has to be something on the other side as well. From both sides you have to be able to access. And then they can make 1 Eiruv. But if you were to put the ladder only to the side of the ledge, not directly leading you to the ledge, and even though from the ledge to the top of the wall there's less than 10 tefachim, but since you can't easily access the ledge, it doesn't reduce the height of the wall. Therefore, says the Rambam, we have a very interesting result. If you have a wall that's 19 tefachim tall, simply construct a ledge coming out at the exact midway point of the wall. So you have 9 tefachim on this side, 9 tefachim on that side, a ledge in the middle. And now, if you want, you can make 1 Eiruv. Shari min haziza the aretz pachis me'asara, umin haziza elyon adreish hakoisel pachis me'asara. Because from the ledge to the ground is less than 10 tefachim, and from the top edge of the ledge to the top of the wall, also less than 10 tefachim. Haya hakoisel gavaya esrim tefachim, but once the wall reaches a height of 20 tefachim, you can't just put 1 ledge, because if you just put 1 ledge, one of the sides is going to have 10 tefachim or more. You have to have 2 ledges. Here you see the picture. It's 20 tefachim tall. You have to have 2 ledges, and the 2 ledges have to be not aligned. So that between the bottom ledge and the bottom of the wall, there's less than 10 tefachim. Between the top of the top ledge and the top of the wall, also less than 10 tefachim. Now you can make 1 Eiruv if you want. Why do the 2 ledges have to be not aligned? Because again, the whole point is that through these ledges, you're creating easy access over the wall. When you have 1 ledge on top of another ledge, it's not so easy to climb that. When you have 1 ledge and then diagonally another ledge, that's easy. You get on this ledge, and you hop onto this ledge, and to the top of the wall, you're good. So once you have that, and the empty spaces are both less than 10 tvachim, it reduces the wall, and if you want, you can now make one Eruv. Halacha Zayin. Dekel shechasocha yusmachi al reish hakoisel v'al haaretz. If you have a palm tree, you cut down a massive palm tree, and you lean it onto the wall from the ground. So kind of like a ladder, but not actually. It's like a round ramp. You can climb it if you want. Ma'arvin echad imratzu. That's enough. That combines the two properties, and they can make one Eruv if they want. There's no need to make it a permanent part of the structure, to set it into the building. Same applies to the ladder. Talked about ladders before. Its weight, it makes it considered to be established as part of the wall. There's no need to make it part of the structure. If you had not a wall, but you had simply a pile of straw dividing between two courtyards, even if you have a ladder on this side and a ladder on that side, unlike when it came to the wall, where there was two ladders, it was allowed to make one Eruv. Over here, even though there's ladders, but because the wall is so soft, you cannot make one Eruv. No human footstep can climb the ladder. It has nothing what to support you. So you have to make two separate Eruvs. But haya sulam ba'emtza, bekashin mikan. If there was at least in the middle, let's say, some kind of a sturdy support. Let's say, right here you had a little thing of concrete, and the two ladders are leaning against the concrete. Even if on both sides the rest of the wall is considered is straw, haya sulam ba'emtza. There's a ladder in the middle. Commentaries add in, and it was leaning on a firm support. The kashin mikan, and the rest of the wall is made out of straw. So now this is already enough leeway to make it considered to be one domain. And therefore the Rambam says, and some commentators want to put in over here, imratzu marvin echad, imratzu marvin shnayim. Now they can do whatever they want. If they want, the ladders are there, they're sturdy enough, and they can consider you to be dealing with one big property, they can make one Eruv. If they want, they can say, two separate properties, and they make two Eruvs. Halacha ches, hoya ilan, betzad hakoisel. If there was a tree next to the wall, and you carved into the tree, making it into a ladder. Imratzu marvin echad. The ladder qualifies. Now, if they want, they can make one big Eruv. What's the problem with the tree? The only problem with the tree is that you can't climb a tree on Shabbos. Rabbinically, we saw in the laws of Shabbat, you cannot climb a tree on Shabbos. So why here, if you carve the tree into a ladder, can you ascend? Because this kind of, as the commentary has explained, this hinges on a law we learned the other day. The Eiruv takes effect in the twilight zone between Friday and Shabbos, right? Remember in chapter 1, the food has to be edible when twilight comes in? That's when the Eiruv goes into effect. During the twilight zone between Friday and Shabbos, there are no rabbinic injunctions when it comes to Shabbos. Any rabbinic injunctions are suspended. So says the Rambam, Hoyil v'isur shvushu. Since it's only a rabbinic prohibition which causes you not to be allowed to ascend the tree, and at the moment that the Eruv takes effect, i.e. during twilight, there are no rabbinic injunctions, so technically, at that point you were allowed to climb a tree, so when Shabbos came in, you were able to unite between the two courtyards by climbing that tree ladder. So therefore, it's considered enough to unite the two courtyards and you can make one big Eruv. Halacha, says that I'm continuing, but if you had an Asherah tree, an idol worship tree, and that you carved into a ladder for the wall, that's not enough. You cannot make one Eruv there. Because that's a biblical prohibition, not a rabbinic prohibition to climb this tree. It's a biblical prohibition to climb this tree. It's forbidden to have benefit from this tree. So therefore, that's not enough to unite the two courtyards, and you have to make two separate Eruvs. Halacha tes. If you have a wall that's 10 tvachim tall, it qualifies as a partition. Ideally, the two courtyards should be separate. And you want to lessen it. You want to reduce it so that you can make one Eruv. The length of the reduction has to be just 4 tvachim, and that's enough to consider it to be an open wall, and you can ascend. Kind of like these ledges that we have on the picture here, in a way. These reductions that we're talking about, they don't have to exist along the entire length of the wall. As long as they have a surface area of 4 tvachim or a length of 4 tvachim, that's enough. That reduces the wall. Sosar miktsas hakoisel achen nismayit me'asara. Let's say you demolished some of the wall to the point that part of the wall became less than 10. And there you have a picture to kind of see what this looks like. You have a thick wall, and then you took out some of the wall, so that if you're standing on this side, your wall at that point is less than 10 tfachim, but on the other side, it's still higher than 10 tfachim. So the Rambam says, Tzidei hakatzar neishna eisel lechatzar zu. The short side belongs to the courtyard which is facing it. Ush'ar ha'kosel ha'gavaya lebein shtei hachatzeres. And the rest of the wall belongs equally to both courtyards. This is an allusion to what's coming actually soon, later on in the chapter, about the concept of when you have a shared space that's accessible by two courtyards, that shared space also becomes problematic in terms of the Eiruv. And even if each courtyard makes an Eiruv, they still can't use the shared space that's between them. So the Rambam's kind of introducing that by saying if you have a wall that's partially destroyed, the destroyed part, which goes under 10 tfachim and belongs to the inner courtyard, that's fine. But the top of the wall, don't think that makes the other courtyard the sole owners of that side of the wall. The rest of the high wall belongs equally to both courtyards. Halacha Yud. Nifratz ha'koisel ha'gavaya shabinein. You have a wall, you have two courtyards with a wall between them, and the wall breaks. Im hoisa ha'pirtza ad eser amos. If the opening was anywhere until 10 amos wide, which 10 amos is considered to be a complete opening, but as long as it's less than that, ma'arvin shnei Eiruvin, the wall is still considered a partition, and they can make two separate Eiruvs. But if they want, they have license to make one, because you can treat the opening like a doorway. The moment the opening crosses the threshold, then now it's more than 10 amos wide. You have to make one Eiruv, the wall is completely broken, you cannot make two Eiruvs. Let's say the opening was less than 10 amos wide. And you want to make it bigger. You want to widen that opening so that you're going to force both courtyards to make one Eiruv. You don't have to match the height of the opening to what it is originally. All you have to do is dig into the wall at a height of 10 tfachim, make the width larger than 10 amos, and now you make one Eiruv. Like you see in the picture here. The opening originally was only 9 amos. The guy wanted to open it one more amma. He doesn't have to open it all the way at the height of the original breakage. All he has to go is a height of 10 tfachim and an additional amma. But if you're coming to begin with to demolish the wall and make the opening wider than 10 amos, not you're adding to an existing breakage, you're making the breakage to begin with, then you want to make an opening wider than 10 amos at the entire length of the wall, so the height of the opening must be the full height. You can't just add a height of 10 tfachim. Halacha Yud Beis. Says the Rambam, by the way, they say the reason for this distinction, because when you have an already existing opening, all you have to do is add a recognizable addition. But if you're making it to begin with, then there's no recognizable additions to begin with. You have to make the entire opening as big as it should be. Halacha Yud Beis. Just like a wall divides two courtyards, so does a charitz shebein shtei chatzeros. If you have a ditch going between two courtyards, 10 tfachim deep, at least 4 tfachim wide, ma'arvin shnei Eiruvin. That forces you into two separate domains. Each courtyard must make its own Eiruv. Paches mikan. If the ditch is less than that, less than a height of 10 tfachim, less than the width of 4 tfachim, ma'arvin echad ve'en ma'arvin shnayim, the ditch doesn't count for anything. They must make one Eiruv, they must all unite together. Kind of like the wall, you want to reduce the height, so the ditch too. You want to fill up the ditch to reduce the height of the ditch. If you filled it up with dirt or with pebbles, that's a good reduction. Now you have to make one Eiruv, you cannot make two. By default, pebbles and dirt sitting in a ditch have no importance to you. But if you fill the ditch with straw or stubble, which you might take back out to use for animal food or something else, they do not consider themselves to be a reduction until you actively nullify your ownership over them. You say, I want to leave them here, I'm not taking them back. Then they can come into effect as a reduction. Same thing if you wanted to lessen, not the height by filling it, but the width by attaching to it some kind of board or reed. Not sure if you can see this. Yeah, it should be pretty clear right there. You attach the board to the edge of the ditch, and now the ditch at the top is wider than 4 tfachim, is less than the width of 4 tfachim. You put this board all across the length of the ditch. Good reduction. You have to make one Eiruv, you cannot make two. But anything which could be moved on Shabbos, like a basket or a bowl, you do not use in the process of the reduction. Unless it's so attached to the ground that you cannot pull it out unless you're going to use a shovel. Then there's a guarantee you're not going to move it on Shabbos, and you've accomplished a reduction. Halacha Yud Dalet. Another way to take care of a ditch. You made a little bridge. Took a board, has a surface area of 4x4 tefachim. Let's see if we have it here. No. And you put it over the width of the ditch. Marvin echad. The bridge unites them, and they have to make one Eiruv. But if they want, Marvin shnei Eiruvin. Since the bridge is easily movable, it's not considered to actually unite them fully, forcibly. They can still make two Eiruvs if they want. If you have two balconies, one opposite the other, that's the picture over here. If you passed a board that's 4 tefachim wide from one to the other, that's considered a uniting factor. And if they want, they can make one Eiruv. If they want, they can make two. Again, it's like a quasi unification. If you want, it gives you license. You can make both houses come together as one or not. Each on their own. What if the two balconies were on the same side of the street and they were not at equal level? One was higher than the other. If there's a space of less than 3 tefachim between them, they consider like one balcony, and they can make one big Eiruv. But if the distance between them is more than 3 tefachim, they have to make 2 separate Eiruvs, each on their own. Halacha tesvav kaisal sheben shtei chatzeros. If you have a wall between 2 courtyards, it's 4 tefachim wide. It's usable at the top. For one courtyard, it was at a height of 10 tefachim. For the other courtyard, it was level with the ground. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean level with the ground, mamish, literally, because then it's not a wall. The commentators explain it was less than 10 tefachim for the second, so it's almost considered like level. See here in the diagram. For the inner courtyard, it's a full 10 tefachim. For the other courtyard, because it's built on a platform, so the wall is only at a height of 5 tefachim for them. We ascribe the authority of the top of the wall to the courtyard who has easier access to it. And the top of the wall is considered to be part of the shorter courtyard. We have a rule, since this side can use it easier, and for that side it's tougher to make use of it, we give it to the ones who have easier time using it. The same thing applies. If you were to have a ditch between 2 courtyards, for one side it's 10 tefachim deep, for the other side it's level. Again, level means less than 10 tefachim, as we see here in the picture. For this time it's the opposite. For the outer courtyard, the ditch is 10 tefachim deep. For the inner courtyard, the ditch is less deep than that. So we go the opposite. We ascribe the width of the ditch to the courtyard, which is level with it. Because the usage is easy for this one and tough for that one, and therefore we give it to the one who have the easier time using it. Halacha tazayin hoya hakaisal sheben shtei chatzeros namuch mechatzer ha'olyona v'gavaya mechatzer ha'tachtona. If the wall between the 2 courtyards was not more than 10, less than 10, it was just low and high, short for one courtyard, high for another. And here, sorry, I misspoke. It's lower than one of the courtyards. It doesn't even ascend at all. There you see the wall. There's the wall at the edge of one courtyard. For this courtyard, the inner one, it's doing something. For the top courtyard, it doesn't even reach them. Which means, the members of the top courtyard can only use the thickness of the wall by dropping things down, whereas the bottom courtyard cannot make use of the wall unless they throw things onto it. It's too tall for them. In this case, they're both forbidden to use the wall, unless both courtyards together make one Eiruv. But without an Eiruv mixing them, you cannot take anything from the thickness of the wall to any of the houses or from the houses to the wall. This is what I mentioned before, that even if you have 2 courtyards that made an Eiruv, but there's another space that's equally shared by them, that space becomes prohibited to both of them unless they unite over that too, unless they make one big Eiruv. If you have 2 homes and between them there's a rune, the rune is a private domain, but nobody's really using it. So it's kind of like the wall. If the only way for both homes to make use of the ruin is through throwing oisrin zeh, they prohibit each other from using that ruin. But if there was easy use for one of them, and the other one cannot throw anything into it because it's too deep, the ruin was so deep, so the one who has the easier time using it through throwing to it is the one that is allowed to use it, the other one cannot. Halacha Yudches, fascinating halacha. Kol gagois ha'ir, all roofs of an entire city, even if one roof is higher than the other, but it's a roof. Im kol ha'chatzeros, together with all courtyards in the city. V'im kol ha'karpefes, together with all large enclosed areas, shehukfu, shalei l'shem dira, which were enclosed not for purposes of living. Remember in Laws of Shabbos, chapter 16, we had a whole chapter dedicated to that. You have a massive enclosed area with 4 walls. It should be considered a private domain, but because it was enclosed, not for living purposes, it has a different law. That's called a karpef, an open enclosed area, an open area which is enclosed with 4 walls. She'ein b'chol echad mehan yasser al beis hasayim, assuming that they don't have a surface of a space of more than 2 sa'ah. Remember this also, 50 by 100 amos. If it's bigger than that, then the rabbi said it's like a public domain. But if it's smaller than that, it's called a karpef. Im avi aksalim shebein hachatzeres, including the thickness of the walls between courtyards. Im hamevayos sheyesh lahen lechi okeira, and all alleyways that have been fixed by having a vertical beam or a cross beam, kulan rishus achasein. As regards the laws of Shabbos, they're all considered to be one shared domain. All the laws of Eiruv that we're talking about till now are about having homes carry into courtyards and courtyards into homes. But as halacha sees it from a bird's eye view, if you're looking at a city, all courtyards, just the courtyards, together with roofs and alleyways that have been fixed and open areas, open enclosed areas, are all considered to be one long shared property, which means the following. Any article that began the Shabbos located in one of these domains can be moved to any of the other domains. If the article began Shabbos inside a home, no, then it cannot be carried from one to the other. Elohim kain Eiruvin, unless there was an Eiruv. So follow what this means, says the Rambam. Malacha Yutes. Ketzad, what does this look like? Klisha Shabbos b'soiche chatzer. You have an article that began Shabbos outside in a courtyard. Bein Eiruv an she'eh chatzer, bein loy Eiruv. It doesn't matter if there's an Eiruv in this courtyard or not. Mutar laha loisei min ha'chatzer lagaga l'reish ha'kaisel. You can take this, let's call it a bowl, from this courtyard to the roof of the home in the courtyard, or to the top of the wall, and from one roof to the next roof, even if it's taller or shorter than the other roof. From a second roof to another courtyard, and from the second courtyard to the third roof, in the third courtyard, from a third roof taken into an alleyway, from an alleyway taken to the fourth roof, you can pass it through an entire city just by accessing roofs and courtyards. Or through roofs and massive enclosed areas. Or through courtyards and enclosed areas, or by all 3 of them, from one to the other and one to the other. As long as it began Shabbos in one of those domains, everything is considered to be one domain for that. But that's provided you do not take this article into any individual private home. Once you take it into a home, it can't leave the home. Or once it began Shabbos in a home, it can't leave the home. Unless all of those people made one big Eiruv to unite their properties, then of course you could. Other than that, you can't. The Alter Rebbe makes an interesting observation. What happens if you have a courtyard, one courtyard, where they made a proper Eiruv? So you could carry stuff from your home into the courtyard. Now that I've carried stuff from the home into the courtyard, why shouldn't I be able to take from the courtyard into all the other courtyards following this mechanism? The Alter Rebbe explains because when something begins Shabbos in a home, even if it leaves the home, it always is considered in some way to be retained by the home. And so even if you made an Eiruv for your courtyard, to carry from your home to the courtyard to the home, doesn't give you license to pass the border of the courtyard. If it began Shabbos in the courtyard, so good, go to any other courtyard, no problem. But if it began Shabbos at home, then no. Halacha chaf. V'cheinim Shabbos akli b'bayis v'hitzia lechatzer. Here it is. If the article began Shabbos in the home, you took it out to the courtyard because you were allowed to. You made an Eiruv in the courtyard. If you cannot move it to another courtyard, to another roof, to the top of a wall, or to an enclosed area. Unless all the places where you wanted to move this vessel united in one Eiruv. Halacha Chaf Aleph. Bersha ben shtei chatzeros. If you have a pit between two courtyards. Okay, we had a pit literally on the border. Ein memalim mimenu b'Shabbos. You cannot fill water from it on Shabbos. It's like that thick wall. Since it's accessible equally to both courtyards, each courtyard prohibits the other from making use of it. But there's one leniency when it comes to water. The sages said, if you made a partition that's at least 10 tefachim tall over this pit of water, that makes as though each courtyard will be drawing from its possession, its domain, and that's okay. Where do we put up this mechitza? If you're constructing the partition above water, at least one handbreadth of the mechitza must descend into the water. If you're putting the partition into the actual pit, into the water, at least one handbreadth has to come out of the water. So that in some way you're dividing one domain from the other, you're showing there's a partition, and that allows each domain, each courtyard to draw water from the pit. Another way of making a partition, if you put a beam across the pit, that's the bottom picture there, at least 4 tefachim wide. Each courtyard can fill water from each side of the crossbeam. It's as though the water itself is divided in the pit. Even everybody knows, you have water, it's all mixing from on bottom. The sages were lenient when it came to water, since people need water. They said, you know what, as long as you do some symbolic type of partition, you're going to be good. You have 2 courtyards that are not adjacent to each other. One ends here, the other ends here. In the pathway between the 2 walls, there's a well of water, as you see here in the picture. Even though it's very far from the wall of each courtyard, there's at least 4 tefachim of space between each courtyard and the well. In this case, both courtyards can fill up from the pit, from the well with no problem. But there's no requirement to put ledges over it. We had in the laws of Shabbos, you had to put a ledge over the seat to fill up water. It shows your ownership over it. They don't have to do that. A person never can prohibit on his friend from using something if the only access is by way of air. See, when it came to the other cases of the pit between the two courtyards or the wall, both courtyards can access the shared space actually. But here, when it comes to the well outside the courtyards, they would only use that space by throwing things out, filling up buckets with it. It's called using it by way of air. When your only use is by way of air, that usage doesn't preclude other people from making use of that same space. And therefore, both courtyards can use the well with no problem. Halacha Chav Dalet. Chatzer ketana shenifritza b'maleya lechatzer gila mi'ba'edyain. You have a big courtyard and a small one adjacent to each other. And the wall between the two broke while it was still day, before Shabbos. So if you look at it from the perspective of the big courtyard, it still seems like it's surrounded by 4 walls. Because even though the wall in the middle came down, but there's still extensions on both sides that are acting in place of a wall. But if you're from the perspective of the small courtyard, your whole wall is broken down. So the Rambam says, the people in the big courtyard can make their own Eiruv, and they're allowed to carry in the space of that big courtyard. Because they have some protrusions coming out from both sides. But the people of the small courtyard, there's no Eiruv fixed for them. They cannot move anything from their walls, from their houses to their courtyard. Unless they join one big Eiruv with the big courtyard. Because those living in the residences of the big courtyard are considered to extend into the small courtyard. But the small ones are not considered to be going into the big one. Or some have it with a cuff, like you have it here. They're not as important, they're not as enclosed as the big ones are, and therefore they don't have the permission to make an Eiruv until they join the massive Eiruv. Halacha Chaf Hei, the final halacha for today. You have 2 courtyards who used the license. They made one Eiruv because there was an entrance between them or because there was a window between them. Any one of the cases of this entire chapter, which allows 2 courtyards to mix and unite under one Eiruv, they used it. They made one Eiruv together. And the opening or the window between them is plugged on Shabbos. It closes. Now what happens? They unified under one Eiruv. Technically, because the opening is closed, now everything should fall apart. Because they're no longer united, the Eiruv which they made united shouldn't count, And now, not only should the courtyards be forbidden to carry with each other, they shouldn't be able to carry in their own courtyards as well. Says the Rambam, nevertheless, kol achas va'achas muteres la'atzma. Each individual courtyard can continue to carry within its courtyard. Hoyil v'hutra miktsas Shabbos hutra kula. A very important rule. Since part of Shabbos was permitted, the rest of Shabbos is also permitted. If Shabbos began in a state of permission, even if later something happened to interrupt it, it stays permitted. The same thing would apply if the opposite case. You had two courtyards that were actually separated, and therefore they made two separate Eiruvs, each one on their own. And the wall dividing between them falls down on Shabbos. Now they're considered to be one big courtyard. One big courtyard cannot make two separate Eiruvs. They have to make one. So perhaps everything falls apart. No, says the Rambam. This courtyard is permitted on its own. And they can take stuff out of their homes and continue to carry till the place where the partition used to be. The Elu on the second courtyard is the same. Can carry in the same way till the point where the partition began. Because part of Shabbos was permitted, the whole Shabbos is permitted. Even though in the case where the wall fell down, there are additional residents in this courtyard, and additional residents typically prohibit the others from carrying. Says the Rambam, residents that arrive on the Shabbos don't prohibit the rest who were there from before Shabbos to continue carrying. Let's say the entrance was stuffed, but then it was opened again, or the entrance was created again, inadvertently, by the Jews. Or Goyim came ahead and with their volition reopened the opening. And then the entire permission returns, and both courtyards can now carry within each other's courtyards. The same rules that we just said apply to shtei sfinos, if there was two boats. If they were first tied before Shabbos began, the Eiruvin, they made an Eiruv to allow carrying from one boat to the other. V'nifseku, and the ropes tying them snapped on Shabbos. Asur l'taltal mizulazu. Carrying is now prohibited from each boat to the other, but within each boat it's still permitted. Even if there was a wall or an enclosing, a partition surrounding all the boats, they become prohibited because the rope snapped. If inadvertently the ropes were tied back together, the unified permissiveness is now back to its original state, and the boats can continue to carry from one boat to the other.